Thank you, Maruf. I was to have been in Delhi for Secretary Perry's visit, the meeting we were having, but since I had given a commitment to come here earlier, I thought I shouldn't miss out, and I'm glad I didn't. Anatole has given a very detailed exposition of a very long experience in Afghanistan. Broadly speaking, let me just say this, that traditionally India has had no problems with Afghanistan. We've had an excellent relationship during the days of King Zahir Shah. And contrary to popular perceptions, the Afghans are very, very smart. They remained terribly neutral on anything concerned India and Pakistan, which I think was suited us fine. The current developments have been somewhat different. I myself, my experience with the Taliban was such that I wouldn't really categorize them as allies of the Sisters of Charity of Mother Teresa. I had occasion to deal with, when I was High Commissioner, with the hijacking of an Indian Airlines aircraft. And let me tell you that at every stage, the Taliban colluded with the hijackers. They lied to us, they lied to me during the first 5 days of the negotiations. And they really went their own way. And it was quite interesting, the nexus which emerged when I was there. The nexus which was put together by Mullah Omar in February 1998, when he established an organization called the International Islamic Front for Jihad Against Jews and Crusaders, which brought together the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda, the Islamic Movement of Uzbekistan, the Pakistani terrorist groups, including the Harkatul Mujahideen, the Jaish-e-Mohammed, and the Lashkar-e-Taiba, quite obviously with the backing of the inter-services intelligence of the Pakistan military. In fact, if you go through the book called Crossed Swords by Shuja Nawaz, a Pakistani and a brother of a former army chief, I suddenly realized that when General Ziauddin was visiting Kabul and I was High Commissioner, I was wondering why he had gone there. Apparently he had gone to ask the Taliban for 30,000 volunteers to hold the hilltops in Jammu and Kashmir, just before the Kargil conflict. So my own experiences, I told you, of the Taliban, it was odd that my officers whom I sent to Kandahar reported back to me that the persons really handling it were not Pashtun but Punjabi speaking. That has its own meaning. We made some stupid errors. I had left the negotiations by the 29th. But of the 3 persons we released, Maulana Masood Azhar, who shortly after he was released went back to Kandahar and called on Messrs. Osama bin Laden and Mullah Omar, and then organized the attack on the Indian Parliament, as acknowledged by Pakistan's own Director General of the ISI. Omar Said Sheikh, a British national of Pakistani origin, arrested in India, apparently used by the MI6 in Bosnia. He was out to kidnap Americans in India, got arrested. We released him, and there's now evidence to prove that he remitted $100,000 to the leader of the hijackers in the United States. He was responsible for the murder of Daniel Pearl and is still awaiting, sentenced to death by an anti-terrorism court, but living very comfortably in jail with a cell phone, much the way the Lashkar-e-Taiba boys are living at the present moment. So I'm afraid I can't be so charitable about labeling either the Taliban or their backers as I said, as being members of Mother Teresa, Sisters of Charity.
I didn't say that.
The thing is that the fact is we have a hard life to live. Just a couple of days before I visited Kabul in 2008, Our mission had been attacked. The military attaché, Brigadier Mehta, killed. My own colleague from the Foreign Service, the political counselor, killed. The attack was carried out according to what we learnt, what the Afghans told us, and what the Americans told us, by people from the Haqqani network coming across the Durand line. For the last 11 years, our policy has been to support the Allied effort, the American effort in the United States, and to complement it. Let me tell you that much of Kabul was not taken by the American forces. It was taken by the Northern Alliance. And the Northern Alliance was backed by Russia, Iran, and India. So that was the extent of the collaboration which we had with the Americans. It continues. We have stayed out of the politics of Afghanistan. That's really for the Afghans to decide. The only thing we did join in was in the Bonn process, when Iran was asking for much too much of Northern Alliance and the representation of the Shias living on the border with Iran. We told them to cool off because it had to be an inclusive democratic government. And let me tell you this, the Iranians played ball with us in Bonn. So you did get an inclusive government in Bonn, largely because the United States had friends outside the NATO alliance. For good reason, we are not going to get militarily involved in Afghanistan. In my view, fighting counterinsurgency on foreign soil is a mug's game. And the other reason is that if you were to send the Indian army, the only Indians who have ruled up to Kabul with a fair degree of firmness historically are the Sikhs, and we have a Sikh Lieutenant General here. And the Afghans would not exactly welcome that form of Punjabi rule again. But that is the reality of history. And I agree with Anand Roll that no foreigner can for any length of time hold on to Afghanistan. The British failed, the Russians failed. So what have we done? We thought we've come to a basic conclusion. We want to integrate Afghanistan with the rest of South Asia to provide access to South Asia to Central Asia and to be a developmental partner of South Asia. What we are looking of within South Asia is a free trade area ranging from Kabul to Dhaka and Colombo and extending westwards to the Maldives to link up with India's larger Look East policy of a free trade area extending through ASEAN up to Japan, an integrated market from Manila to Kabul. That is a vision which is the only way forward, not at looking at Kabul or Afghanistan isolated in a South Asian, India-Pakistan context. We have, in the last 2 decades, last decade and a half, contributed very significantly to Afghanistan's economic development. We've built a road of 218 kilometers, the Zaranj-Dilaram road. The aim is to give Afghanistan strategic autonomy by having access to the sea through the Iranian port of Chabahar. We are working with the Iranians and have got a tripartite Iranian-Afghanistan-Indian agreement for the development of communications and a line of communications from the port of Chabahar, so that Karachi, which is already crowded and has its own problems, is not overloaded or goods delayed. We have engaged in any number of projects. We've built the highest electricity communications lines, bringing electricity from Central Asia, from Uzbekistan to Kabul. We are involved in the Salma Dam project in Herat. We are building the Afghan parliament. We have financed some 107 industrial projects in Afghanistan. there are, at the present moment, at least 2,000 Afghans, students, professionals, engineers, undergoing professional training in India, communications networks we've been involved in, and vocational training, and even energy, solar energy in large parts of Afghanistan. We have hospitals there, we have education centers there, and we are providing the wheat necessary for the education of 2 million Afghan school children. It's 1 million tons of wheat every year. That is the extent of our involvement. And we have come to a conclusion, and this we are working it very closely with the Iranians, with the Russians, and with the Americans, that we'll put in an investment of about $10.8 billion in the development of Afghanistan's natural resources, predominantly iron ore and coal, and construct a 6 million ton steel plant with an 800 megawatt power plant in northwestern Afghanistan. Afghanistan cannot forever remain an economic basket case. We do not want a South Asian neighbor to be a burden on the rest of the international community. South Asia will have to learn to live on its own and not depend on the outside world. And Iran has the resources. The Chinese, for example, on their copper mine are still held up because of the security situation. But as I said, the sort of projects which we are envisaging, which we are prepared to invest in, and this is an investment of $10.8 billion, will be contingent on peace. Because true, this largely will be through Herat and the non-Taliban areas where we'll concentrate on, where the highway goes to. But nevertheless, to have projects of this nature, you need peace. So we have a vested interest in peace in Afghanistan. The thing is, where do we go from here? We've had discussions with Secretary Kerry, and we are quite clear in our mind that, one, we are willing to help in the Afghan election process to see that the next elections are transparent. I think the Election Commission of India has ensured that we don't have mess-ups like in Florida a couple of years ago. The thing is that we will go ahead with these, but we'll go ahead with it internationally. We don't believe in going ahead alone. We've had some discussions with the Chinese, but the Chinese are pretty inscrutable. We know for a fact that over the last 10 years they've been in touch with the Quetta Shura. Links with the Taliban for the Chinese have been facilitated by the ISI. Taliban leaders we know over the last year have visited China. To the extent that that contributes to a Chinese assistance in working out a pluralistic, democratic order in accordance with the Afghan constitution, it suits us fine. But we have an open mind on this, because I do remember when I was there, the only ambassador who called on Mullah Omar was the Chinese ambassador. So the Chinese are playing it, to my mind, both sides of the fence, which in their position I would not begrudge them. But I think we should be realistic about this and not overly, getting carried away by purported Chinese goodness of heart. We are in touch with Afghanistan's Central Asian neighbors. We do have a hospital now on the Tajikistan-Afghanistan border working again. Sadly, that was the hospital where Ahmad Shah Massoud was brought there when he had already died. But we are not going to get involved in the internal politics of Afghanistan. We want Afghanistan to remain united. And I must say this, I don't accept this 60% figure of the Pashtun support for the Taliban. That's not our reading. We have people on the ground. Right now, they just want to be left to live in peace. I do believe that we're going to be in for a difficult situation. I think the opening of the Doha office has just given one an idea of the pitfalls involved in the way ahead. But we believe that any negotiating process with the Taliban has to be within the Afghans themselves. You cannot have outsiders dictating the term for an intra-Afghan dialogue. What do we then see the terrorist threats as emerging from Afghanistan? At the present moment, I think Pakistan is, I'll give one idea of how comfortable Pakistan is with India. They've shifted, I think, 3 or 4 divisions from their border with India to deal with their Pashtun problem in the 32 brigades, which is a pretty large number, which is almost 1/3 their army from the Indian border has been shifted to the Afghan border. They don't face any threat from India. They wouldn't do that if they were facing an immediate threat tomorrow morning. But I also want to caution that Indian patience is not unlimited. And a repeat from Mumbai would not of a Mumbai-style attack would not necessarily see the sort of Gandhian response which we have given to in the past. I'm personally very happy at the election of Mr. Nawaz Sharif. I am not so sure about the military. Pakistan's 3 stars today are all Zia-era generals, recruited during the period of General Zia. And I think General Zia gave a very clear idea of what his perspectives on Afghanistan were. He said, "We have earned the right to have a friendly regime in Afghanistan. We took risks as a frontline state and won't permit it like it was before to be with Indian and Soviet influence and claims on our territory. It will be a real Islamic state, part of a pan-Islamic revival that will one day win over the Muslims of the Soviet Union. You will see it." Now, as I said, I have fairly large and long experience of dealing with the military. We are seeing, I wouldn't make any real predictions at this point in time, but to believe that this generation will suddenly give up the ambitions, the large-scale ambitions of an Islamized northern border is not a risk which India would be prepared to take. I think, I've dealt with Mr. Nawaz Sharif, and really we wish him success. We wish the democratic experiment in Pakistan to succeed. If the army is not seizing power today, or it did not do so during the Zardari dispensation, it was not because of any great love for democracy. It was because they realized that to have responsibility to go with power in a situation which was boiling in Karachi and heating up in the northwest was not something the army wanted to have on its hands. So the Zardari period was very much a period of the army wielding power and controlling foreign policy, and we know it firsthand from behind the scenes. Nawaz is not Zardari. He is from the heartland of Punjab, the heartland of the military, and we would certainly like to see how things play out. Right at the present moment, we had some talks with their government. A special envoy was there. He's a batchmate of mine in the Foreign Service, one of my predecessors in Islamabad. The offers are open. It's for Nawaz to choose. I mean, if Pakistan is facing a crisis of Lahore having 6 hours of electricity a day, fine. We'll extend our transmission lines to Pakistan. If they're facing problems of Iranian oil and Saudi oil supplies, fine, we've got refineries in Bathinda, we'll work with them. We have a vested interest in the stability of Pakistan. We have a vested interest more than anybody else in working with them to a larger economic framework. In fairness to Musharraf, we came pretty close to a Kashmir settlement in his time. The framework was there. So it's not as though that things are not happening, things are happening. But personally, our relations of anybody with Pakistan are accident prone because of the volatility of the domestic politics in that country. I personally have a large number of friends there, wonderful people. We've had, at the level of person-to-person contacts, excellent relationship with them. I do wish we are more liberal in our visa policies and encourage more of them to come to India. But Lashkar-e-Taiba is a permanent asset of the Pakistani military. I have no doubts in my mind. And as far as Afghanistan is concerned, the symbiotic relationship which exists between the Taliban on the one hand, the Al-Qaeda, the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan, various Arab groups, the contacts they've maintained across the Islamic world, these can't be wished away. I don't think the Taliban are going to give up the Al-Qaeda in a hurry. Even when they threatened with an invasion, they didn't do so. So I think we are in for a hard grind in Afghanistan. And I would sincerely hope the sort of relationship that we had with the West, the sort of contacts we've been having with the United States and with our neighbors and the Russians would continue. Because that is going to be the aim of Indian policy. Right now, as far as this conference is concerned, I think every Indian state now, after Mumbai, is sensitized to the need for building their own security potential. Because law and order in our constitution is a state subject. And states are very zealous in guarding their constitutional rights. So we'll keep it going there. I'm glad we have had this discussion here in Delhi, in London. We will certainly like to follow up on this. But the solution to Afghanistan, I don't believe the Soviet withdrawal is going to be replicated. I don't think, if you are the United States, where was 9/11 planned? It was planned in Taliban-ruled Afghanistan. Salim Shehzad of the Times Square fame, who wanted to blow up the Times Square and failed, son of a Pakistani air marshal, was trained in these badlands. Many of the guys who stage your terrorist attacks here have received their training in the Afghan-Pakistan border. So I think these are realities we can't wish away with glib talk. As far as I'm concerned as an Indian, as I said, I have a vested interest in a good relationship with Pakistan. We've got started well with Mr. Nawaz Sharif. And I hope the dynamics of internal politics there is he's allowed to have his say. That is what I think everyone should encourage us to do. And as far as Afghanistan is concerned, their future is to be decided by Afghans. It can't be decided in Whitehall or the State Department or the External Affairs Ministry in Delhi or in Rawalpindi. Necessarily, what we should all do is encourage an Afghan process, and I also believe encourage a movement towards a free presidential election in Afghanistan next year. Thank you.